Fulham won, Arsenal won. That was probably one of the worst games I've seen this season from Arsenal. And I know it's a draw, but based on how this season has gone and due to the things that I've seen thus far, I am really, really annoyed with the way that Arsenal played today because how do you have over 70% of possession and you can only score one goal? You barely are able to get any shots on target. It's absolutely ridiculous. And unfortunately, we have to repeat the same old points again of Arsenal not having a striker and not having a clinical finisher. But unfortunately, those are the only things that we can come back to, and those are the things that we can talk about because at the end of the day, a lot of these problems go back to the transfer window. But if we were to just analyze this game today, and if we were to talk about the opposition, especially with Fulham, Fulham have basically become a bit of our bogey team as of late, and they shouldn't have been because our team, especially today with the players that were on the pitch, was enough to beat Fulham. And although Arsenal had a very good start, Raul Jimenez came in, completely blindsided Kirill, made a decent run, and what a fantastic finish that he was able to do. I've always liked Raul Jimenez. He's a good striker in the Premier League, and he was able to get a really key goal. And throughout the rest of the game, Fulham weren't able to do much on the offensive end, but they came in with the game plan, which was essentially to just defend, make life hard for Arsenal, be physical, and that was essentially what was going on. I mean, did you see Adama Traore basically shove Saliba away for the corners? Yes, Arsenal were able to eventually get the equaliser through a corner in which Saliba did header the ball, but that just affirms my point that what Fulham set out to do today, they did fantastically, and they were very close to possibly getting maybe one or two more goals, especially from Smith Rowe, who absolutely had a horrendous touch, but they were very close in that way. But I will give them their credit, well done Fulham, but from Arsenal's perspective, it just wasn't good enough. I mean, some of the same old culprits. Partey missed an absolute header. Havertz, he was running himself to the ground as usual, but at the end of the day, he just wasn't getting at the end of those chances. Yes, he did get the assist for Saliba's header, but I need more from him, and we need more from him, especially as someone who is the striker for Arsenal. And especially from Raul Jimenez's goal, Kirill was just sucked in, and although he had a great game against Manchester United, we can't forget about the other games that he's played this season. Yes, you can have one good game, but you need to be consistent and have many good games and maybe have the one off game. But for certain players, it's just the absolute opposite. And with Kirill, he let Raul Jimenez go and completely missed his man, and that was it. Game done from that perspective, and they got the goal. And this is the thing with Arsenal. It took them a while to sort of control their nerves and get back into the game because at the end of the day, Fulham allowed them to keep the ball and do something with it, because unfortunately throughout the season there's just been so many narratives about Arsenal from the media, whether it be defense against dark arts football and now it's corner FC, and unfortunately Arsenal are playing into these sort of narratives and we need to just forget about it. Yes, great, Nicholas Over has helped us with set pieces tremendously and we thank him for that, but one of the main things about football is that you need to make goals from open play, and over the last two games, Arsenal just haven't been doing that. Yes, they've been dominant in getting the 5-0 win against Nottingham and 4-0 and whatever in the last few games that we played, but we need to get more goals from open play. And one of the most infuriating things that I've seen throughout this game is the fact that Arsenal just weren't creating enough chances. And I have to look at Odegaard for this example, because Odegaard, as great as he is, today I don't know what's happened to him. He had a bit of a knock, but essentially all the creativity was just gone. I mean, Rice was running up and down like just, like a donkey, just going up and down constantly, and he was really putting in the effort in, but we needed more from our midfielders and we needed more from the wingers as well. I mean, even Saka today, Saka was barely able to get onto the ball. I know they were closing him down, but sometimes if you want to be the top player, you find ways to get it done. And it was unfortunate about what happened with the offside goal, but throughout the rest of the game, Saka just wasn't really effective either, and that's something that I wanted to put a light on as well, because I demand a lot from Saka now because he's the talisman for the club. But overall, it just wasn't good from the midfield department. Yes, Jorginho we know his legs are spent, but he was looking all right in the CDM position, and Odegaard should have done a lot more. And if we were to go on the left side, I thought Trossard the first half wasn't that great, but I think he was getting himself into the game. But the problem was is that Arteta, I think, took him off too early, because with Trossard, I could see just a couple minutes before he came off, he was getting into those areas and getting those chances. So I think if we had kept him on, I think we would have been able to nick another goal there. But we can't really do anything about that right now. And like, with this game, it was a very good idea for Martinelli to be on the bench, because I have constantly said this fact throughout this season that my eye will be on Martinelli and how he performs this season. 2 seasons ago, he scored many goals, he was fantastic, but now, especially in last season and especially this season, so far he just hasn't been good enough, and we need to have these tough conversations. And I like Martinelli, but unfortunately, we have to say, is he good enough to play in that left wing position? Because I've had this discussion before on whether or not he will take us onto the next level. And just on the form that he was on, and basically even the way that he was coming on today, he just looked very erratic. He looked very annoyed and upset, and especially when he was getting the ball, just nothing was going his way, especially with the offside goal. Like Paul Merson said, that was unforgivable. It was criminal. I mean, if you're on the wing, you have a clear idea of where the defensive line is for the other team. So for you to miss that, especially even if it is a split second, it's just not good enough. And unfortunately, it has cost Arsenal 2 points, especially in this title race. And for Martinelli, I expected a lot more from him, but I'm getting to a point now, and I think I might already be there, where we need to look for other options, especially in the transfer market, because we've got Trossard, we've got Martinelli. Trossard is an older option, although very effective. Maybe Martinelli could play for Arsenal down the line, but for his wages and for somebody that is not a kid anymore, someone who's meant to be going into the prime stages of his career, I expect a whole lot more from him. And it's also similar a little bit to Rashford in a way, where people expected Rashford to go up a certain level, but unfortunately just hasn't really gone that way. And we need to have these tough conversations with some of our players. And I've already talked about another Gabriel Jesus, the chance that he had where he didn't even just go for the ball, he didn't strike it, didn't finish it, didn't even try to get a touch, missed an absolute horrendous sitter there. And the thing is that I believed it was right for Kai Havertz to get subbed off, but the problem is who is your options? And when Gabriel Jesus came on, if there's nothing more I can say about him other than the fact that he's only scored one goal in the last 10-11 months, and that was against Preston. And I'm not expecting this guy to do anything in the Premier League, because Gabriel Jesus is not good enough. He's rubbish in my opinion, from the performances that he's given over the last year. Somebody who's played at Manchester City and won many Premier League titles, to come here and to be this low in confidence, to put in these levels of performances. And he's a person that has come in as a striker, and I don't want people to forget those things. He is a striker. He can say whatever he wants about he's this position, that position, and he doesn't know. No, he was brought in as a striker, and he's a guy that can't score goals. And if you're not scoring goals, especially as a striker, then you're of no use. And at that point, unfortunately for Kai Havertz, we're better off not taking him off, even if he does have a bad game, because Gabriel Jesus isn't going to provide us anything different. And the quicker we move in on, the better. But overall, it was horrendous. And if we were to look at it from the title race, it is looking absolutely abysmal. I mean, 8 wins, 5 draws, 2 losses in 15 games. We're not even in the halfway point of the season, and we are at this point 6 points away from the top of Liverpool FC. But the thing is, Liverpool have a game in hand, because they weren't able to play against Everton due to the weather issues, so they could be 9 points clear. And this is the thing with Arsenal fans. I've seen a lot of people say that there's a lot of games in the season, which is true, and Liverpool will drop points, but why are we looking at Liverpool dropping points? We need to look at ourselves. We need to see, okay, how are Arsenal going to do anything this season? Because yeah, Liverpool can drop points, but guess what? Arsenal can drop points too. And we could drop even more points, especially if we're not careful with how we play these games. Because I've seen that some Arsenal fans are saying that Arsenal can go unbeaten in the next however many games up until January and whatever. But I think that's very wishful thinking, because I look at this team and I think to myself, based on the previous performances, what is there for me to be convinced about Arsenal winning the Premier League this season? And if I'm to be perfectly honest, I think this is the game where I'm quite confidently assured that Arsenal aren't going to be able to do anything in the Premier League this season. I mean, for Chelsea to get ahead of us even now, I know there's a lot of games left, it's just not good enough. And we can only be patient. We can only see how the rest of the games pan out. I'm not looking to get into a top four battle, especially after 5 years and 800 million being spent, because with Mikel Arteta, he's had many chances and he's had many opportunities as well with Edu in the transfer market, but it's just not sure. There's nothing to show for it essentially, other than one FA Cup and 2 Community Shields, especially in the beginning of his tenure. And with the defensive problems that Arsenal have, and having to put Partey in right back for God's sake, and the players that we brought in, I mean, Calafiori, and this is the thing that I haven't spoke about in the last couple of games, because with him, he looks okay, but he doesn't look that good to me just because of his positioning and the way he commits himself. And he's a player that needs to be coached for a while. He needs to take a bit of time to get it. But I think he will get it over time. But as of now, I just don't think he's all the way ready yet for Arsenal. Yes, he's put in some good performances, scored that goal against City, but you also need to look at why we have conceded certain goals in certain areas. And some of them are due to Calafiori being out of position in that way. And the problem with Calafiori, especially in this season, is the fact that he'll play a game, then he gets injured, and then he'll be injured for a while. And there was news of him having a ACL injury or MCL injury or something like that when he was in his previous team. So you have to put these questions on the recruitment of Arsenal, which has always been one of the biggest issues that Arsenal have. And I know that a lot of Arsenal fans are begging for Arsenal to get a striker, but you have to look at the financial aspect of it as well, because with Havertz being one of the highest, literally having the highest wages at the club, and the only way you can bring in a striker is if you take, you know, Havertz or someone else off and change the formation. But let's be honest, if you have someone that's on the highest wages, are you really going to take them out of the team? It's looking quite unlikely. I mean, they did it with Gabriel Jesus, but I don't know if they'll be doing the same with Kai Havertz, but that's a discussion for another day. But you know what? This game was absolutely horrendous. Yes, it's a draw, but in the grand scheme of things, for the title, which is the goal this season, it's just not good enough. And I think Mikel Arteta's game management, especially in this game, has been poor, very poor. And this is another thing that will add on in the season, went throughout the rest of the season. I mean, there's talks about the Champions League, there's talks about the FA Cup. I'm not looking too much into it right now. The main thing is that we need to do the best we can in the league, get trophies, wherever they are, in the domestics or hopefully in the Champions League. I'm not hopeful in that, but hopefully, and just see what we can do. But overall, great performance by Fulham FC. We played very well. Smith Rowe, not so great, but we're just going to have to move on and deal with things in the next game. I think it may be against Monaco, which, let's see what happens there. But anyway, that's the end of this video. Very poor performance, Arsenal, and very disappointing throughout the rest of the team. It's just been completely lackluster. You do so well, but for people to think that Arsenal will go on this magical run, and for people to expect Liverpool to drop points, but for Arsenal not to drop points despite the opposition, it's just very naive thinking. We have to be real and just see things for what they are, and right now Arsenal are just not there. But anyway, that's the end of the video. Hope to see you all soon in the next video. Bye bye.